And it might sound a little strange. Is it possible that the very pillow you sleep on every single night is actually harming your eyesight? I know, it sounds pretty out there, but a fascinating new study suggests there's a surprising link between our cozy pillows and the pressure building up inside our eyes.
I mean, that seems totally backwards, right? Sleep is supposed to be when our bodies repair and recover. But what if the way we're getting comfortable, the way we're trying to get a good night's rest, is accidentally creating a hidden problem for our eyes? Well, that's the exact question a group of researchers set out to answer.
You know, for pretty much all of us, pillows mean one thing: comfort and support. But what if they're also a source of, well, hidden eye pressure? It's a weird thought, isn't it? How can something so soft cause such a serious problem? To really get our heads around this, we first have to understand a little bit about what's going on inside the eye itself.
See, it all boils down to this really delicate balance inside our eyes, and that balance is maintained by something called intraocular pressure, or IOP for short. And trust me, understanding IOP is totally crucial for the rest of this story.
Okay, so think of your eye like a tiny, self-inflating basketball. It needs just the right amount of pressure to hold its shape and work correctly. This pressure comes from a fluid inside the eye. But here's the catch. If that pressure gets too high, it starts to squeeze and damage the really delicate optic nerve at the back of your eye.
And that is why this is such a big deal. Because that damage from high IOP, that's the main driver behind glaucoma, which is, get this, the leading cause of irreversible blindness in the entire world. The stakes here are incredibly high, which is why managing that eye pressure is absolutely critical for saving someone's sight. Okay, so with that danger in mind, researchers put together a really clever experiment to figure out if pillows were actually part of this problem. So let's dive in and see exactly how they set this thing up.
First off, this wasn't some tiny study. They brought in 144 adults who were already living with glaucoma. This is really important because it makes the findings super relevant to the very people who are most at risk. And they didn't just grab any 144 people. The group was really diverse, including folks with different types of glaucoma, from the most common kind to another called normal tension glaucoma. This gave their study a really nice broad scope. Now, the method they used was incredibly detailed. They tracked each person's eye pressure for a full 24 hours. Here's how it worked. They'd measure it every couple of hours while the person was just lying flat. Then, they'd prop their head up on 2 pillows, wait 10 minutes, and measure it again. Then back to flat, then back to elevated. This constant cycle let them see in real time exactly what effect those pillows were having.
Okay, so we've got this set up. 144 people, 24 hours of meticulous testing. So what did the data actually show? Well, this is where things get really interesting. The biggest takeaway is pretty shocking. A full 2/3 of the people in the study, that's 67%, showed a clear, measurable jump in their eye pressure when they used pillows. This wasn't some fluke or a rare side effect. For this group, it was basically the norm. And if you zoom out and look at the averages, the picture gets even clearer. The pressure was just consistently higher across the board whenever people's heads were propped up. So we're not talking about a few extreme cases skewing the results. The entire average moved up. So how much did it go up? On average, the increase was about 1.6 millimeters of mercury. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a huge number, but you have to remember how delicate the eye is. For those tiny structures, even a small but sustained increase in pressure can do real damage over time, especially if you already have glaucoma. But wait, there's more. It wasn't just about the pressure inside the eye going up. They also looked at something called ocular perfusion pressure, which is basically a measure of how much blood is flowing to the eye. And guess what? They found that when the head was propped up on pillows, the blood flow actually went down. So think about that. It's like a double whammy. More damaging pressure on the inside and less nourishing blood flow on the outside. So this all leads to the million-dollar question. Why? Why on earth would resting your head on a soft pillow make your eye pressure go up? Well, the researchers have a really compelling theory, and it all comes down to the connection between your neck and your eyes.
They think it's basically a chain reaction. So, step 1, you use pillows, maybe you even stack them up high. This forces your neck to bend forward. Step 2, that bend in your neck can actually squeeze or compress your jugular vein. Now, your jugular is like the main superhighway for fluid draining out of your head. So if you compress it, you get a kind of biological traffic jam. That fluid can't drain properly. Pressure starts to build up in your head, and that backup eventually increases the pressure inside your eyes.
And this isn't just a wild guess either. The team actually ran a separate study with 20 healthy volunteers to double-check this idea. And what they found was, sure enough, using pillows really did narrow the jugular vein. It was direct evidence backing up their whole theory.
Okay, so we have a clear finding and a really solid explanation for why it's happening. The big question now is, what do we do with this information? What does this actually mean for you and me? Let's get into the real-world takeaways. The researchers themselves are, cautious but also pretty hopeful. This quote from their paper really sums it up. Positional modification emerges as a plausible strategy. What they're saying is that just changing how you sleep could be a whole new way to help manage eye pressure. We're not talking about more drugs or surgeries here, but a simple change you can make yourself.
So the bottom line is pretty straightforward. If you or someone you know has glaucoma, just being more aware of your sleeping position and trying to avoid that sharp chin-to-chest bend in your neck could be a really simple but powerful tool for managing the condition long-term. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, it is super important to talk about the study's limits. This was what's called an observational study. That means it found a very strong link, a correlation, between pillows and eye pressure, but it can't 100% prove that one causes the other. The scientists also pointed out that some of the patient groups were a bit small, so we definitely need more research to confirm all this.
But it leaves us with a really fascinating thought to chew on. In a world full of complex surgeries and high-tech medicines, is it possible that the simplest change, just how you position your head at night, could be one of the most effective? This study suggests that's a question worth thinking about, maybe even tonight when your head hits the pillow.